I have a question. I'm not a parent, but I really like to know what are the common problems that parent would face if they start off this inner child journey, and how would they be supported in going through this journey, especially in the initial moment?
Thank you, Terence. Well, the first thing to say that's very, very common is that it's quite universal. Yes, I feel it's universal because I see this as a phenomenon with all parents anywhere I go in the world. I think it's intrinsic to the human story, intrinsic to human nature, that first of all relationships in our lives with our partners, our spouses, our workmates, etc., our people at work, all relationships have the potential from time to time to press buttons for us, because body memory is what they call state dependent. Any stimulus from our environment that puts us in a state that is a little bit similar in some way to an old lived experience, an old story, that has the power as a trigger to bring up old feelings. And then when we become parents, there's quite possibly, I think, nobody in our lives that is such a powerful trigger as our own children, because we're so open to them. They're by being children, they remind us of our own childhood, and by being our children, and they're so close, we're so entwined with them, they trigger us probably more than anyone else. And I see that all the time, really. Do you know, it's from the beginning. There's so many mums and dads that I've spoken to from the moment their baby is born. Sometimes there's inexplicable feelings that come up and parents don't have a context for that. One example is what they call postnatal depression. In postnatal depression, it's one word. There's not one thing. There are many subsets of what they call depression. And sometimes what it is that there's grief that comes up for a mom, sometimes for a dad as well. This beautiful new baby. And what's going on is that it's bringing up a little bit, or sometimes more than a little bit, of some, like an old grief, like a sadness, a sense of loss, something from your own time as a baby. And if you know your story, there might have been something that happened that separated you from your mum or from your dad, for an illness or a turmoil in the world at the time, or whatever it might be, or even a death in the family, somehow an early loss, and you feel it again when your baby is born. I see that so commonly. Now, your question, Terence, was, what kinds of problems? This is a problem mainly when we fail to become conscious and aware of what it is that's actually going on. Because if I don't recognize, usually when these feelings come up that don't seem to be related to the present moment, and you think, am I irrational? Am I crazy? That's the way it happens, Terence. I shouldn't be feeling like this. I should be happy. There's a lovely child here. The feeling seems out of place with the present moment. If I don't become conscious of the fact that what's coming up from me is a true feeling, not really about now, but about my past, and that I can have a conversation with this inner child or inner baby, and that can bring great healing to me. This is an opportunity for great healing, maybe to shed a tear, maybe to speak to someone that I trust about these feelings that are coming up. Remember, this connection is what heals. Human connection heals. What heals is human connection. Sometimes that's all. Opening up to another person that we trust, and saying, I'm feeling this, I'm remembering that. Don't fix me, I'm not broken, just hear me. And let me know if you're touched, if you care about me. And that brings a great release, great connecting with another person, great release. So there's a purpose. Our child triggers something. The reason these feelings come up is because it's looking for healing, a healing connection in the world. So it's only a problem, you know, there's a benefit. You can see the benefit to that. It's only a problem when we don't know the reason why these feelings are coming up, when we don't pay attention to and become conscious of our own inner child. Then we get frightened and we think there's something wrong with us, or we're crazy, or I'm depressed, I need some drugs, or even worse, that we, you know, very often what happens is that with our children, when we, at the point that we become exhausted, exasperated, frustrated, if we don't pay attention that this is inner child stuff coming up, there's a tendency to blame our child. And I know that often we need to say no and set strong boundaries of behavior with our children. That's very important. However, when we do that from anger and punishment, now there's a problem. We're acting out. We're repeating the history, what was done to us towards our children, without being conscious that that's what's going on. So coming back to your question, in a nutshell, the only time that the inner child memory is coming up, the only time that that's a problem is when we fail to become consciously aware, when we fail to ask that question, what's coming up for me right now, so that we don't take ownership. This is about me and my history. It's not all about how bad the world is, how bad my child is, what a bad dad I am, what a bad mum I am. It's a memory, it's a body memory asking for attention. That's how we can go from a problem to a very beautiful result. Okay. And thank you for your question.
For the
Yes.
5 steps, Robin mentioned that we need to firstly look at the trigger and to understand the incidents that might have caused the feeling. The incidents refers to the incidents that happened when I was a child, or the incidents that caused me to have the feeling towards my child's action.
It's both. You know, I'm not saying, please understand this. I'm definitely not saying that everything that you feel is only because of your history, and it's not all inner child. There are real issues in front of us with our actual son and daughter that require our attention and require our response. Sometimes we need to come and help them, support them, give them holding and affection, listening. Listening is the most important thing. Sometimes there are times where we need to say no, to take a stand. No, I will not let you hurt your little brother, your little sister. No, I don't want you to keep on using your screen. I want us to have dinner together as a family. I won't bring the screen. I don't want you to bring yours. No, I don't want you speaking to me that way. I feel offended when you talk to me that way. So, etc., etc. All kinds of interventions that we must bring in to keep our children safe, to help them to grow up, to help them to understand boundaries, etc. So it's not all about our inner child. When is it a good time to look at our inner child issues? When we start to perceive, when we start to realize that we are becoming judgmental of our son or daughter, we're becoming blaming of them or judgmental of ourselves. That's a good time. I think there's some inner child things coming up for me. Time to look at that. Or when there's a pattern, that every time your child does this, you overreact. Look at your overreactions or your underreactions. That's a sign of an inner child wound as well. It's not just overreactions that we get angry and we terrify our children. Sometimes it's underreactions. 50% of the time, the problem is that with parents, they become permissive. They let their children do whatever they want, and they try to say no, but they say no in a very weak voice. That's usually a parent who was so badly crushed, shamed, and punished as a child that they're terrified to make their son or daughter feel like they felt when they were little. So they hold back their personal power. They forget how to be assertive and strong with their child. They forget how to say no, and we must say no sometimes. So when we underreact a lot in a repeated way, or overreact a lot in a repeated way, blaming and shaming and punishment, etc., those are times when you can bet your life that there is an inner child thing going on for you. And you need to set aside some time to be alone, to have your eyes closed and go through those steps internally and be curious. Your inner child wants to be known and seen. Your inner child has a need that needs your attention. Now, you can do this on your own, but sometimes if it becomes too difficult, or if the feelings that come up are too scary, too powerful, that's when it's important to work with a trained practitioner. And sometimes, and even I've needed to do that too, to go to a counselor or a psychologist that can take care of me while I go through that process. So sometimes alone, sometimes better not alone, sometimes with other people. The feelings that come up towards my child's actions are, if I'm overreacting to my child and becoming punishing or judgmental, shaming, etc., you can bet your life that it's not only because of your child's behavior. Now, that doesn't mean that your child's behavior might be problematic and your child might need a behavioral boundary, and you do need to intervene. But the size of your reaction, if your reaction is violent or oppressive, punitive, then it's most likely that it's not only about your actual child, but about this inner child things, wounding that is coming up. So take the time to then sit alone. Ask yourself, even though my son or my daughter, they needed an intervention from me, I needed to step in. However, why do I get so angry? Or it could be the other way around. Why, when I should be stepping up and saying, no, son, I don't want you to do that, that's dangerous or hurtful, why I find it so difficult, I'm scared to do that. Okay, there is the situation with your son or daughter, but there's the additional material that's about you. What this does, when you go into your own inner child work, it doesn't take away from your role as a guide and as a parent. It actually makes you more, gives you more efficacy as a parent. It makes your voice stronger and also more empathic, so that when you speak and guide towards your son or daughter, they want to listen to you more. They will want to listen to you more. Okay. I hope that answers what you were asking.
With SEN kids, we have 4 kids, and for example, ADHD and high functioning autistic kids, what is your advice on empathizing with their needs when you feel that you are stretched to the limit?
Danny, thank you. Look, I'm really glad that you've asked this question, because it really demonstrates that the inner child work is not something that you use for every situation. It's not something that helps you with every situation. It has its very specific uses that are about essentially your own growth. It does not, and this is most important, inner child work cannot replace some of the other things that you need. Let's not get that confused. So it sounds that you have some special needs in your children that require specialized attention, and that, of course, that's very, like to any parent, that it places you under a great demand, and inescapably you need all of the support, professional and otherwise, emotional support as well, because you have a very considerable job to do. My first concern is to treat your exhaustion, your emotional exhaustion as well as your physical exhaustion. The most empathic parents in the world are subject to empathy fatigue, because that's the way that we are in the human body. All parents can suffer empathy fatigue past a certain point. What we need then, and it's perilous because we can push ourselves so hard that we can be on the edge of a breakdown. We need to become more and more and more alert to the support that we need to learn to receive. So then you face the issue of reaching out. And almost everybody has some kind of difficulty reaching out and saying, I need more help, please. I need someone to talk to more often. I need more practical help as well. If you find challenges around that, if it's a struggle, if it feels embarrassing, if you get very anxious about, becoming a burden to other people, all those kinds of issues, it might help you to do some inner child work about that. What messages were you given growing up about, is it okay to reach out and ask for help? That's my first, I guess, instinct about your situation. So definitely lots and lots and lots of support for you, and you learning how to let yourself receive the support, to let yourself receive it. And if you notice you feel guilty about receiving support, that's a good reason to do some inner child work about that. Is it okay to receive? Is it okay to receive? What messages did you receive about that in growing up? If you have children, I think you mentioned ADHD, and that brings its own challenges, strong challenges. And just pay attention to, when do you lose your ground, and is there a pattern to that? If there are times when you start getting very, very angry or just exhausted and you don't want to listen anymore, you come to the end of your tether. The first thing is always ask for more help from another person. But secondly, if you see a pattern in yourself, that's a time when you have a moment. Sometimes I do a personal inner child inquiry when I'm in the bus. Nobody needs to know why I'm looking out the window. I'm just internally talking to my inner child and listening to him in my inner child. I find that opens up more spaciousness inside me. Even if there's children around me that are behaving in the most crazy way, that's how I come back to that grounded center, that even when there is a storm around me, noise, big emotions, big reactions in the children, that feeding my inner child helps me, is one of the things that helps me to come back to that grounded center. Think of the center of a tornado. The tornado, that powerful wind, is is the wild emotionality of our children, the tantrums, the crying, etc., their exuberance, all of that. But if you've heard about this, inside in the very, very center of that tornado, the air is perfectly still. If you stood inside in the middle of the tornado, you would be standing in perfect calm. Now that state is most helpful to you, but also to your children. When the parent finds their ground, the children start to calm down with you. It's quite uncanny. But you can't force yourself to be calm. You become more calm when you're like a father or a mother to your internal inner child. If your inner child is saying, I'm going crazy, I'm going crazy, I'm going crazy, help me, then you listen to that internal voice. At least say to yourself, I understand, it's okay to feel crazy right now. Imagine yourself wrapping your arms around yourself. Like a good, strong dad has just arrived in the room for you. That helps to give you the ground. And then kids around you start to settle a little bit. You'll see that happen. So I'm trying to give you some examples of when is it appropriate to use inner child work, and when, another tool that is actually needed. A tool of responding or someone else's help. Okay, thank you for your question.